Oh, you're listening to the Wil and Dave Show.
The Wil and Dave Show is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
I can't find the button. Can you just hum?
Just start over.
Prime time, we completely ruined it.
Start over.
Go on, off you go.
I'll say it again.
Yes.
The Wil and Dave Show is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Oh, I don't want to give you me fucking lighter.
Yeah, we're on prime time. It is Saturday. It is 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I have just done not one, not two, but 3 broadcasts on Racebot TV and a podcast. And now, Dave, it's episode 26 of the Wil and Dave Show. Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah, but what I want to know is 6:30 prime time in England? Because it's not prime time till 8 p.m. in America.
Okay, it's late night in England. It's not quite prime time in America. So if you combine the two together, if you're living in Brazil right now, this is prime time.
Yeah, alright, I'll go with that.
Yeah. Basically, welcome to the Wil and Dave Show, Brazilian prime time. Woohoo!
Brazilian primetime style for Senna!
Yep, for Senna. We can't make too many Senna jokes, but we'll talk about that in the next episode, of course, because this episode starts right now. Dave, off you go.
If you're a real big fan of the show, follow us on Twitter at Wil and Dave Show. You can also like us on Facebook, also at Wil and Dave Show. Tweet us, Facebook us, send us a comment on the YouTube, whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy. We'd love to interact with you guys. And we enjoy doing the show with your guys' input. Hell, write on the forum if you want. Whatever makes you happy.
Well, we'll start with 2 bits of breaking news. The first one, Twitter's changed again. The second one, in fact, Twitter's just like turned into a mini Facebook all of a sudden. I have no idea why. But the more important one, Dave, we have a legitimate follower.
Yes, we do. We have a follower from IndyCar. And it's a verified account.
Yeah. So, whilst, you might have Taki Inoue on some other shitty podcast, we get real people with real input in motorsport following the Wil and Dave Show Twitter. Fuck you, universe.
Thank you, Kathy Neitlinger, for following us. You can follow her at C. Neitlinger. We retweeted, we sent out a shout-out earlier in the week on the Twitter to her. So give her a follow. She's got 6,941 followers, including us, so let's give her a few more.
The other thing is, now I'm 26, I really should kind of become a little bit more civil in the way I communicate with people. Yeah, I think I've sworn about 8 times in this podcast. Really not going well, is it?
No, and before we go on any further, happy birthday, Will Vincent. I hope you enjoy your 26th year on this earth.
It's a bit of a belated birthday. Of course, if we were to have pre-recorded this, it would be a pre-birthday, but we don't pre-record the Wil and Dave Show now, do we?
Of course not.
No.
Do it live.
Always live. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Every single Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, live every Saturday.
That's right. Every Saturday. Not Thursday, Raw Thursday, but Saturday.
Yeah. Unless, of course, you decide that you want to get people to come and have dinner or something stupid like that. I mean, come on.
Well, we could
marriage.
Well, we could be. No, I was just going to say, we could be like other shows and just have a clip show.
Yeah, true. I mean, why? This is one of the issues about being married, isn't it? Is that you occasionally have to listen to other people other than yourself.
This is true.
Should we invite someone around for dinner? No, I've got a podcast to do. No one's going to accept that once you're married. It's like, no, you've got to go and cut the lawn, wash the car, clean the house, then we have dinner. You've got to sit there, not looking miserable, then you can do your podcast. It's like being homework and being 13 years old again.
I probably have a better chance at using, the podcast as an excuse if we actually made money on it.
We do. We make something like $2 a month. $2 a week, actually.
I get like a hot dog and a Coke.
Yeah.
We gotta split that between us. I guess I'm only getting a Coke.
And I get one piece of chicken.
Well, yeah,
How
white
do you, KFC?
white meat or dark meat?
Right, in this episode, we promised it to you. We will deliver the first part of the Afterburn Diaries. It's going to be a very long... It's like that show that I'm not allowed to mention on the podcast, Dave. It's going to be about that long, except we're not going to split it over 9 years. We're going to kind of condense it as much as we can.
Yeah, we'll try to get to the heart of the matter, the real meaty bits, as you might say, and hopefully we'll answer some of the people's burning questions. Now, since this is only part one,
unless
if
you've got chlamydia, we're not going to answer your questions if you've got chlamydia.
Sexually transmitted disease joke. Or, I'm sorry, in America, it's sexually transmitted infection.
Yeah, what's the difference? No, well, the thing is, there's a difference between an infection and a disease, right? Because an infection is something that will clear away. A disease is something that you've got to live with. Pretty
sure you're not going to call AIDS an infection.
No. There we are, the Wil and Dave Show, clearing up the difference between an STD and an STI. That is real 100% consumer advice. Now, from one piece of consumer advice to another, the new iRacing build. It's fucking awesome.
Well, yes, it is. I would be safe to say that I was surprised. Last couple builds, a little lacking, for lack of a better term. But they've improved a lot of cars, put more cars on the new tire model. My favorite road car, the Daytona prototype, they finally did a physics overhaul. The car doesn't want to spin out at 40 miles an hour in every corner. The HPD drives a lot better. The new BMW Z4 GT3 car's out. You got the Toyota Camry G6 Gen 6 car. Yeah, the G6 car out. I mean, then you got Circuit of the Americas, Formula One purpose-built track in the United States. I mean, doesn't get much better than that.
We're missing it. We're missing the important thing, that if you hit Alt and K whilst you're in-game, you can move the boxes about.
No.
No one can ever complain, are you not looking at your F3 box ever again? Because I'm going to have it right in front of my face. I'm not going to be able to see what I'm doing. I'm going to be able to look at my F3 box at all times.
I'm going to put the F3 box right where the car and the track should be.
Yeah.
But you know what, Will? I thought, honestly, the best feature was changing the test button to be orange.
Yep, and of course I broke it to you first on Facebook, facebook.com/I am Will Vincent. It's a huge change, Dave, and let's be honest, without that change, how will people be able to differentiate between whether they're testing or whether they're racing?
Shouldn't they be able to read?
What if you're dyslexic like me? Think of the disabled people.
Was it really a problem for you?
No, because I'm got a mediocre of intelligence.
Well, speaking of unintelligent people, I guess maybe that's why CCM's still around.
Well, that's a true story. Best car, you have to say, the Beamer. I drove it once for, oh my god, this is horrible. Drove it for 20 minutes, that car. It's phenomenal, but at the same time, it now makes me understand everything about BMW drivers, because I now understand why they never use turn signals. I now understand why they always pull out into the middle of highways thinking that there's no way in hell they're ever going to be killed or no one is going to be around them. Because that car in iRacing is built like a tank. We did a bit of racing on Wednesday,
yep.
And we were smashing into each other's rear the same way that anyone would love to smash into Kate Upton's rear. And still, our car never got broken.
No, the car takes quite a bit of damage, which was quite surprising. In one race, I got rear-ended by you. Car still drove straight. I got spun out by somebody else, broadsided in mid-spin, turned straight, and the car still kept tracking straight. I mean, it really takes a big hit to make that car, really, really damaged. I mean, I never even got a meatball flag.
Unless you hit it on the side, I think the side impact, and you can almost imagine that because of the way the roll bars are. We're getting technical here on the Wil and Dave Show. The roll bars, of course, on the front and the rear. It seems to be if you get a 45-degree impact, that is when that car really gets damaged. I had a moderate hit on the left front, and that is when my car got destroyed. So if you're going to drive the BMW on iRacing, if you're going to hit someone, hit them at the front or hit them at the rear. Don't fuck people sideways, literally.
that's good advice whether you're driving or in life. So,
I've got an important question for you, though.
What's that?
Remember back on in the IndyCar a couple of years ago, every other person had, and this is before, of course, we had all the whole, everyone was on a team thing. Like 1 in 2.5 people had a GoDaddy skin.
Well, of course, everybody was a Danica fan.
Now that we've got the Toyota Camry on iRacing, how many people are going to start driving M&M's paint skins?
I'd say 96.5% of them.
Of course, the only people that are going to buy Toyota Camrys are the dipshits in the first place. The people who are then going to race them are the morons who actually think that anyone who drives a Toyota in NASCAR is good. And then again, you've got the 4% who are probably 5 Hour Energy sponsors.
True, you can't...
Stuff done.
Like, get my speed vision back.
Gotta get my speed vision. Well, we never took off the head. Oh, but behind the Speed Vision Wil and Dave Show logo, to explain, what was it, last week, just before we went on air, you talked about someone being put in prison. Yeah, who was it?
Well, trending on Facebook at the time was a Donovan McNabb headline that he had been arrested for DUI and that he had to report to jail for his 1-day sentence or whatever it was. And they had his mugshot in the article. So Will Vincent and all of his intelligence decided to put the mugshot buried in the background of the YouTube video.
I think we're going to have to make this more and more crazy each week. Every time we find something interesting that's non-related to motorsports, well, in case, in this fact, it actually is related to motorsports, because after all, no motorsport driver is an athlete at all. But
unless you get arrested.
Unless you get arrested, of course, in which case you've got to be an athlete because you get out without being posting about or anything. But still, that's one of the things that we might start adding to the show. And as you now know, Dave, not only can I photo edit, I can also audio edit. Would you like to have a listen?
Absolutely. Let's hear it.
What I want to do is thank everybody on this Budweiser, Chevrolet, everybody from Sprint, the fans, Jimmy John's Outback, Hunt Brothers Mobile One, Bass Pro, Haas Automation, and Jimmy John's Outback, Hunt Brothers Mobile One, Bass Pro, Haas Automation, and Jimmy John's Outback, Hunt Brothers Mobile One, Bass Pro, Haas Automation, and Jimmy John's Outback, Hunt Brothers Mobile One, Bass Pro, Haas Automation, and Rush Truck Centers for making all these teams go around the racetrack.
That's a lot of fun.
A lot of repeats. I mean, they must be pouring a lot of money into Harvick's team to have to mention him that many times. But, I mean, they're clearly putting in a lot of money because he's up front every single week.
Well, to be fair, that was about... all of those sponsors was from the same 30-second interview. They were just condensed down. I was just thinking what would happen if you had to condense them down. I was like, nah, actually, let's just put it on repeat. And there we are. But, of course, there was a break in NASCAR. In fact, there was a break in pretty much everything except for Formula 1. We'll come to that in a moment. But NASCAR is back, and it's at Richmond. It's a track which Junior historically is pretty good at. Johnson's been good, but...
He's actually been kind of meh lately.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that has to do with it's always the last race before the chase starts, and Jimmy Johnson's usually solidly in the chase by then, so he really doesn't have to try that hard.
Yeah, and of course, because it's not the last race before the chase, we don't have to randomly give out raffle tickets to allow people to enter the chase who wouldn't otherwise be in it. And also there's no need for people to have their 5 hour energy wear off and start spinning.
Hopefully no one gets poison oak this time around. Clint Boyer.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as that race goes, the spring race is always a bit weird. I don't remember any interesting spring races at Richmond.
Don't you remember last year when there was like a 2-lap shootout? Well, Montoya was leading. Caution comes out with a couple laps to go. I think Harvick, Montoya, and the leaders got 4 tires. Some guys got 2 or none, and Harvick drove up from like 8th to 1st in 1 lap to come win the thing.
I think what happened there was I saw Montoya was leading with 5 to go, and I
turned it off in disgust.
Yeah, no, I went to my garage and I got my noose out, which I sat there for a long time, and I was about to hang myself.
Oh, well, why would you hang yourself over Juan Montoya, or Juan Pablo Montoya?
Juan Pablo Montoya winning an oval race in NASCAR. Come on, could you imagine it in the press? It'd be worse than when Danica Patrick won an IndyCar race.
Yeah, well, at least when Danica won, it was, like 2 in the morning in America, and no one cared.
Yeah, but then what did they do? And of course, for those of you who are not as au fait in IndyCar as myself, this was the last ever race of the split. Now, because of contractual reasons, IndyCar had, well, the IRL, as it was still technically back then, had to go to Motegi. They had a contract. However, the Brisbane Presents, the Champ Car World Series powered by Ford, had to go to Surface Paradise because they had a contract.
That was Long Beach.
To Bosch. Huh?
It was Long Beach.
No, it wasn't. It's Surface Paradise.
Like, Long Beach was the last kart race.
Yeah, of course it was Long Beach. How the fuck did I forget that one? I got Surface. Yeah, I got Surface and Long Beach confused. I mean, they're both street circuits. I'm dyslexic. Leave me alone.
Well, and they're on the coast, too.
You see, this is the issue when we do shit live, Dave. We can't cut it out.
We'll do it live!
Fuck yeah.
It's really a shame that Andrew King couldn't join us, but he has a family.
Yeah.
And kids that obviously come first, but...
Yeah, especially...
Andrew King, we miss you, by the way.
On a Saturday when you're definitely doing a podcast live.
Speaking of Andrew King, his pictures a couple weeks ago on the podcast were definitely the best random pictures we've posted.
I think they are. We've got to bring one of them back at one point, I think, because they were bloody awesome. Go Yukon.
Well, I think we need to hurry up and touch on Formula One really quick and then dig into the real...
We've not finished my story. No, I'm finishing my story.
No one wants to hear about Danica.
Shut up! We've got the last race of the split. And, of course, Danica won in Motegi. Coming on a turn number 4. And, guys, move over. The lady's coming through. Danica wins the twin in Motegi. Was the call there by Marty Reid before he started going a little bit loopy. And then you had the last race of the Bridgestone Presents the Champ Car World Series powered by Ford. And then 2/3 of the way into the broadcast, guess who shows up? Danica. And we didn't even see the last 2/3 of the race because all we saw was Danica in the booth, and the fucking announce crew were just having a wet one.
That's all you can say. I mean...
So, should we move over to China, to Shanghai?
Can we see how few words we can use to properly describe the race?
Hashtag Mercedes, hashtag Chinese fail. There's actually a lot of things I want to talk about on this. Did you see, first of all, the podium?
Well, I saw the podium, but what was...
Yeah. Did you see at the top of the podium?
No.
Well, apparently Nico Rosberg has turned British. Would you like an image?
They put the wrong flag up for him?
Yeah. I
didn't even notice.
I mean, this is the Chinese Grand Prix, who are using CGI all over the place. And look at that image.
Apparently Fernando Alonso is also from Great Britain.
Yep. So, there we are. Our other issue was, and this is one thing that really pissed me off, was that when apparently Monza, they used this last year, CGI adverts on the racetrack, mainly because of the fact it cost quite a lot of money to put adverts on the ground. And, you know, Formula 1 cars, especially turn 1 at Monza, they kind of like going over the grass sometimes, so they didn't want to ruin it. But you couldn't tell. If you were just watching the race on TV, you actually couldn't tell. It was only when the photos came out and people was like, wait a minute, how have they photoshopped all the advertising off? And it was a bit like back in the day, Autosport had to Photoshop the cigarette advertising off of the F1 cars because you couldn't advertise it on the front cover of an Autosport magazine in the UK because of our cigarette laws.
So stupid.
Yeah. But China is a little bit more obvious when they decided, this time we're going to show a graphic on the front stretch, this time we're not. And they did it all over the place, and really, it's kind of the same technology that NFL used for their down markers. Just what's the point of it, Dave? What is the point of it?
What is the point of it? I don't know.
I have no idea. It's absolutely unacceptable, as my old commentator partner, Marius Gollenbeck, would say.
Unbelievable what you do.
And the fact that I was having to bring that one up, in fact I saw it in qualifying first, is like, really, this thing is a little bit fucking boring. But the race itself, again, a little bit boring.
Yeah, Hamilton just ran off with it, and I think he lost concentration for a minute. If I remember correctly, he went off a corner or two, and he's just like, no problem, there's so much runoff, it don't matter.
Yeah. And, of course, before we get to the snafu that at the end of the race, we'll go back to Friday practice, shall we? Pastor Maldonado.
Yeah. Oh, I've crashed. There's a shocker.
That, though, I mean, I've never seen a Formula One driver spending so much time looking at their steering wheel that they forgot which way the track is turning next.
What? But there's a lot to do in there, Will.
Yeah, you can do it on a straightaway, not when there's like a 50-yard run into the next corner.
You're assuming that Maldonado has enough sense and to actually hit buttons and turn dials on, I don't know, the 1.1 kilometer straightaway.
Yeah. And then, of course, he did the David Coulthard 1995 Australia manoeuvre, which is, we've not wasted enough money today, let's waste some more by crashing on the way into pit road, which is similar to the incident that Hamilton had, except Hamilton didn't really cost anyone any money. In fact, he gained the sponsor some money, and in fact, they got extra TV time. Maldonado, he kind of tore the right front off that car. I think he's trying to get a job in IndyCar as Takuma Sato's new teammate.
He didn't kind of tear the right front off. He did tear the right front off.
I was trying to be nice to him. I mean, come on. He's
Why?
Dick. I thought I'd be nice to him just this once.
Yeah. Why change now?
Yeah. But, of course, as far as the race itself goes, the Chinese got so bored of the race, I wanted to finish it a lap early.
Yeah, the marshal, for whatever reason, waved the checkered flag a lap early. And turns out there's a rule that says if the checkered flag comes out before the end of the race, that is the end of the race.
You can imagine that the next time Ferrari's leading at the end of the 5 laps to go, and there's a Red Bull closing him down. Oh no! The flag, he just comes out of the flag stand and starts waving.
One of the Tifosi runs across the track, jumps the starter, and grabs the checkered flag, starts wildly waving it.
But the checkered flag came out, therefore the race has to finish. There's nothing that can be protested.
10 laps into the race, there's like a sudden downpour. Ferrari comes out in the lead. Wave the checkered flag!
Yeah. Oh, in fact, could you imagine at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix?
Yes.
It's the point that, Vettel's closing, and it's a double point. I think every single fan will rush the fucking flag stand to try and wave the checkered flag at it. There's a lot of scope now that this rule's come to light.
This is true. I can't wait. Somebody's going to try to do something someday. It's going to happen.
It'll be Greenpeace at the Belgian Grand Prix.
The whole stadium seating section will be waving checkered flags.
Yeah. In other news, though, Ferrari have scored a podium in every race since Stefano Domenicali's left the team, which is a good run for them.
Yeah, we'll see how long they can keep that statistic up.
But Kimi Räikkönen got a little bit pissed off this part.
A little bit?
Yeah. In pure Kimi Räikkönen fashion, it's a very short interview, but it kind of says what he needs to say. Shall I read it to you?
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know why you always come up with motivation. If I didn't have motivation, I wouldn't be here. It's fuck all to do with this. We have bad races. It's an unfortunate thing, but it's how it goes sometimes. The aim is to improve, and, we have a lot of work to do. We haven't had a single race where I've been happy with everything, and things are difficult, but once we get more mileage, we can, maybe work some things out. But right now, I go drink vodka and smoke Marlboro cigarettes.
Does Marlboro still sponsor Ferrari, technically?
Yeah, technically they do. This is the whole thing that caused a huge uproar in F1 a couple of years back, that they signed a sponsorship deal with Ferrari, even though it was something like 2 years into the fact that no other cigarette company thought it was viable to sponsor F1, because I think you could only use the flag advertising like 2 races.
Yeah, we're going to have to check throughout the season to see where the Marlboro name comes up on the cars, because I was just about to ask, well, there's got to be some reason to put it on there. Like, I don't know, I thought maybe like India, but they don't even race in India. I'm sure in Russia they don't have those kind of rules, do they?
Who knows? So basically, what's happened is that the official team name was still called Scuderia Ferrari Marlboro until the 2011 British Grand Prix, and then basically it's like, oh no, you can't say Marlboro. There's children watching. They're going to start smoking because you said the word Marlboro. I mean, let's be honest. It's not as if you got a cowboy in a field smoking them like we did 50 years ago.
Yeah, these rules of, cigarettes and all this stuff are just ridiculous. I mean, you got people drinking alcohol on TV and all this other stuff. We're not worried about the kids getting drunk?
Nope, and let's be honest, I think the alcohol is going to kill people a lot quicker.
Yes.
Especially if you drink as much as I do.
Guess what, Will? If I'm smoking a cigarette behind the wheel, I'm not going to kill anybody. But if I go to a party and I have like a half a bottle of vodka and then I go get in my car and I hit somebody, it's going to be ugly.
Yes, but of course the police will then say, well, actually, you had to take your hand off the wheel to light the cigarette and then take your hand off the wheel.
Blah, 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 blah.
Don't forget, though, don't drink and drive.
Bernie also says when you can make $1, do it, and if you can give someone $1 to make 10, do it too.
Yeah, precisely. Don't drink and drive, but bribe people all you want, allegedly.
Moving on.
Yes, moving on before I do get sued by FOM. That's the reason why you know that Formula One podcasts, they've had always had action taken against them from FOM if they use Formula One in the title of the podcast. You can say Grand Prix because at the end of the day, Grand Prix is just grand prize, big prize in French to English. You cannot say Formula One in a podcast name, however.
Because then you'd owe them mega bucks.
However, you can bribe Bernie Ecclestone $20 and you never know, you might be able to get away with it.
Oh, come on, Bernie needs at least add a couple zeros to 20 and then he'll think about it.
But very quickly, before we do move on, you remember how I have the NASCAR on Fox bingo game?
Yes.
I think we should have one all season long, or play some form of game. What new sponsor will McLaren have this season?
Oh, God.
I mean, what did they have? Let's go back. They've had Mobile One, they've had Gulf Air, and now they've had SAP.
Gosh, I don't know who else has graced. I don't know. It could be anything on any billboard that could run across their car next.
It really could be. I think there should be some form of sweepstakes in this as well. We need to get Dogecoin sponsoring
I think they're going to need a little...
Such wow.
They're going to need a few more bucks than they did for the Josh Wise car in Talladega. I'm pretty sure of that.
Well, one of the forums outside of iRacing that I frequent every so often, they actually got a sticker on a Marussia once.
Did they really?
Yeah, they did. I think they paid them about 200 quid and they got it was a small sticker on a Marussia. No, it wasn't Marussia, it was HRT even. And I think it's probably, the only HRT sponsor ever on that car, which is why they gave them it for so cheap. But I'm wondering, actually, how much Dogecoin we need to raise to get a sponsor on that McLaren. Because let's be honest, they're not getting sponsorship from anywhere else.
No, and they're not going to either. As much as Ron Dennis says that, they're waiting for the right sponsor and everything's in the works. If that was the case, the name would have already been on the car.
If Hamilton was still there, they could have got New Era sponsoring it. Then it would have been interesting, because then you'd have a reason to change it every 13 seconds.
This is true.
I'm waiting, though, for the day that they stop painting the cars and they just start having really HD LED graphics in the car, which will alternate sponsors every so often. It'll be like on the Fox box, except it'll be on a car.
You better trademark that, man. Somebody's going to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to put it on my patent tomorrow. I'm still suing my city, so I might as well try and put a couple of patents in at the same time. Who knows? Investing in my future now. I'm almost getting towards the age of 30.
There you go. Speaking of stickers quickly, when you go to Indy this May, any chance you can get a Wil and Dave Show sticker on one of the Indy cars?
Yes, I've got some big news to say on IndyCar at some point and the Indy 500. I can't tell you yet because it's not been confirmed, but hopefully I'll hope to do that in the next 2 weeks or so.
We wait with bated breath.
And talking of IndyCar, they are going to Barber Motorsports Park this weekend.
They're already there.
They are? Yes.
You know what? Let's hope that they have a good race. I mean, last year's was a little uneventful.
They always are a bit uneventful, to be fair. I mean, I remember back in 2011, you remember when they first brought out double file restarts? It was actually like running in an Irish.
Hilarious.
Green flag back in the air and we're back in the course.
And if Fox was broadcasting it, they would have been in commercial before the yellow came out.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I think with IndyCar I'm really glad of, is that they've got rid of the double file restarts on road courses.
As much excitement as it did add, there were a lot of torn up cars. But then again, St. Petersburg had single file restarts and a bunch of cars got torn up too. It could just be the drivers, I guess.
Well, especially when you got some fucking bogan at the front of the field. Is it racist me saying bogan?
I don't think so.
Oh, I don't want to give you me fucking lighter.
There we are. Exclusive interview of Will Power. Hey, Will, can I have a lighter, please?
Oh, I don't want to give you me fucking lighter.
Episode 25 ranks pretty much at the top of my list right now. I mean, that was a great episode. Then we did the random radio call of the IndyCar fixed race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Chris C. Miller showed his ass to the world yet again, losing all of his talent out of turn 2, smacking the inside wall, and then just deliberately turning the car right, in my view, right in front of the field, wiping out of Kingsbury. I guess really no loss there. But still, the fact that he just turned dead right to take out as many cars as he could, that's Week 13 street stock stuff right there.
Yeah. And let's be honest, I've not watched too many Week 13 street stocks, but I saw a huge crash. In fact, one of the races I was in this week, in Week 13, was a huge crash. I think I dodged about 20 cars. In fact, there was another race I was in with Jake Cameron, who commentated to me on the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series on iRacing Live and RaceBot TV. And literally, there was a car who spun in turn 4 and then came up the racetrack, hit another driver. I couldn't avoid him. I hit him. There's a 25 car pileup.
Damn! Yeah. That's like Talladega, the big one right there.
Yeah. I mean, this is at Charlotte as well, and we all know how good I am at Charlotte.
Will Vincent is the king of Charlotte.
I am indeed. Even though it only took me 54 qualifying attempts to get into that 0.6 bracket.
It doesn't matter how many qualifying attempts you had.
You Rudy Poo.
Candy ass.
Before we move on to the Afterburn Diaries, did you see the 6 hours of Silverstone? Sorry, the 6 hours of ad breaks.
I was only able to follow it on Twitter, so I didn't actually see the broadcast. Who was even showing it?
I don't know. Motors TV was in the UK. Apparently, I still watch them, even though they don't think that I'm the best commentator around, which, is deplorable of them, but that's all right. Good job, Liam. But one of the Audis, he crashed at, I believe it was Copse Corner, and then he decided that even though he didn't have any steering, he's going to try and drive his car.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oops. Can you do me a favour? Can you fill for 40 seconds for me? Just give a bit of an insight as to what is coming up on something.
What is coming up? Well, guys, Will's been hinting at it for a little bit. Episode 30 coming up in just a few short weeks. Everything Will has been telling me, it's going to be an extra special, jam-packed, wonderful, super awesome show from a possibly special location with super special guests and lots of super stuff. So if you're a fan of the show, wow. If you're a fan of the show, you're really going to want to listen to episode XXX. I'm sure it's not going to be as graphic as the name would imply. I don't know if that's been 40 seconds yet. Probably not. Yeah, that's how good of a broadcaster I am. We are professionals here at the Wil and Dave Show. We just do whatever we want.
I just got a question for you. Episode 30, or Triple X, WrestleMania, they did actually call it Triple X, which I was thinking a bit risque, seeing as they're PG, but now more kids are going to be watching some pornography, which is good.
Remember when the one WrestleMania was X-rated?
Oh, God, yeah. We were talking about this the other day. They had... Because I keep on remember us bringing it up when we were talking about the NASCAR Nationwide Series at Daytona and that awful anthem. And you had the band who did the D-Generation X theme tune did a new wave version of the themes of America the Beautiful and the Star Spangled Banner, which basically spent half their time going, America! 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 America!
Sounds like America to me.
America! America! That's actually exactly how it sounded.
Why do they have to mess with the classics, man? I just leave it alone. You are not. Most people in the world, no matter how famous you may be, are not important enough to put your own little touch on the Star-Spangled Banner or, whatever patriotic song you want. Just leave it alone. Just be done with it. Stephen A. Tyler, I'm looking in your direction. Land of the free and home of the Indy 500. You're a moron.
Yeah. In the line that I was going down, though, episode 30 was supposed to be done live at the main event. Only issue is, Dave, you're not going to be there.
Yeah, unfortunately, things came apart for me to be able to go to Indy this year. But bonus is that I did get a new job, so I'd rather have that than have to deal with what I was dealing with, but I'm really going to miss you guys. I mean, I could probably phone it in, but you guys could possibly... you could still do it. Maybe you have a special Thursday episode.
Though. It could be the first episode that we don't do. That's the only issue. What we're going to have to do, one of those fucking highlight shows or something, but I really want to do it. We'll have to find a way. My biggest issue is I'm going to actually have to leave my own PC on all week so that I can then remotely connect to it to actually start the stream and hope that it doesn't crash, because if it crashes, I'm fucked.
Why can't you do it from, your laptop or something?
I need the uplift. We're getting too technical. I need the upload connection. I can get the upload connection through my home PC because I've got 150 meg down and 15 up.
Nice. Yeah. Well, we'll try to make it happen. If you do a Thursday episode, maybe I could download the TeamSpeak app for my phone or something, and we could do it live. We could do it live!
Fuck it!
Or Saturday afternoon. I don't know. It doesn't matter. We'll find a way to make sure that episode XXX goes off that weekend.
Of course, what we could do is get GlacierTV to it. And who knows?
Okay, so I'm sure nobody heard any of that. So let's move on. I think we've teased everybody enough. Should we get into the real meat and potatoes of this episode?
Where will all the martyrs go when the virus cures itself? And where will we all go when it's too late?
Guess what, Dave?
What, Will?
We are opening up the book of secrets, magic, and everything that is, was, and always will be Team Afterburn.
The most hated iRacing team probably ever.
Yeah, in the history of the universe ever. Let's be honest, it had the laughability of Pet Chow Motorsports. It had the controversy of some of the teams who like stealing staff, then etc. But it also had some success. It's had a number of IndyCar championships, and it also, of course, had Ryan Norton.
And shall I say, in my own honest opinion, that's the reason for the downfall of Team Afterburn.
Well, we will come to the downfall of the Team Afterburn at some point. But yes, it actually was the reason of the downfall of Team Afterburn. There was a bit of a coup that went on that failed miserably. And then there was an incident involving a wall on the outside of a corner at Milwaukee.
Oh, we might have to get into that one today, Will. But,
I'm bored of this music now.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to kind of fade that out. Well, Afterburn does have a storied past, and though it no longer exists, it's still mentioned even today on the iRacing forums, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you want. It was, a deal for great contention amongst a lot of iRacers. But, Team Afterburn kind of had humble beginnings, didn't it? How was Team Afterburn founded?
I'm going to do this still keeping a bit of comedy in it at the same time. It started really as a mixture of good old boys not wanting me and me arguing with Niles Anders, calling him, and this is probably one of my most historic quotes from back in the day, an elitist, pretentious bastard. Which then we created the formation of the Elitist Pretentious Bastards Club, which now I'm technically a member of because Niles Anders and Monica Clara Brand both inducted me into that club. And it includes people who, you know, have to have been a veteran in the IndyCar, don't run as much as they used to for various reasons, like to blame the car for the reasons why they don't run it, and also the competition. And I am now a true happy member of that club. But really, I remember when I first started on iRacing, I always wanted to run in the IndyCar. Did you ever see the on IndyCar.com the iRacing advert, which I think had Dan Weldon in it?
Yeah, I seem to remember those.
Yeah. Now every single time we talked about this actually in the interview that you did for me for iRacing News, but the every time that you're on the live page on IndyCar.com, it played that advert. Now, IndyCar had a bit of an issue where it would do a bit of PSR TV and start buffering. About every 15 minutes, you'd have to refresh. Oh, look at that, another iRacing advert, another iRacing, and eventually it wore me down. I came on, wanted to drive the IndyCar, got into the IndyCar, and I was piss fucking slow. First races I did, mainly because of that, I did a couple of races at Talladega in the IndyCar and things like Charlotte in the IndyCar. I acquired the attention of the good old boys, but for some reason, Dave, they didn't want me.
Why would the good old boys not want old Will Vincent?
Could be because I'm black.
Are you saying that you're racist?
No, of course I'm not saying they're racist. But they did take a 13-year-old chipmunk English kid over me.
Who was that?
I've forgotten his name. Jack Dummer, I think.
Boy, they made a real good choice on that one, didn't they? If we don't even know who he is now.
Yeah. But I will give some credit here to good old boys. I think they are the longest active iRacing team that I'm aware of, because I mean they still run today. Daniel Kendall, for example, still runs, and Mike Welch occasionally runs, and they are still, in my opinion, the longest running iRacing team on the IndyCar.
Well, I guess no skin off their nose for not accepting you, though, huh?
Nope. So then I had the famous argument with Niles, and this was over Michigan. Of course, back in the day, Michigan was pure speed. I mean, anyone who drives iRacing Michigan today, it's a piece of piss. I can drive that car one-handed whilst eating a steak and smoking a cigarette, drinking vodka from the bottle.
I'm pretty sure
it wasn't like that, though. I mean, you kind of remember it back when you started. I mean, Michigan was a completely different animal. We had some really good races, actually. You might have wrecked me once, but we had some really good races.
My God, I remember back in the day with the old tire model, you actually had to, like, conserve tires, pit more than once, actually change tires. Tire pressures actually mattered. I mean, and it wasn't all draft lock. I mean, we had huge races. Like, every Monday it was like 20, 25 guys, 3 splits deep.
Yep.
So you had like 75 guys signing up for these races. I remember not having a low enough iRating, hoping and praying that I wouldn't get into the top split, because I knew I wouldn't have a shot in hell at winning the thing or even finishing the top 10.
Oh, I remember when I was getting close to 3,000 iRating, and I still wouldn't make the top split sometimes. And of course, there are some people coming, oh, we will never be a legitimate series until we get splits which are 3,000 iRating. We had that before. It got ruined because of certain people, certain actions, and certain things. There we are. I've said it. But so yeah,
you said it, but you didn't say anything.
I know. We'll come to that, okay? So then we had the argument with Niles, which is a big one. And I always say, back in the day, you were never a true iRacing IndyCar member until you had A, complained about the lack of setups, B, spent 2 weeks trying to figure out that car and be only about 0.2 of a second faster. C, had an argument with Niles Anders, and of course you're never going to win an argument with Niles. And D, have an argument with Tim Doyle. And E, enter a Premier Series race, not realising it's a Premier Series race, just realising that it's actually a race on an oval. This was back in the 66 days.
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, I missed the 6 days. I think I started like the season that the full road and full oval schedule started. So I missed all that fun.
Which was, I think, 2000. Yeah, it was in fact the first season of Team Afterburn. 2011 season 3 was the first official season of Team Afterburn. It was kind of started up in season 2, however, back when it was the last season of 6 and 6. This is going back a while. So anyone who's complaining about 6 and 6, or in fact, it wasn't even 6 and 6 at one point. It was actually 8 and 4 to the roadside.
Which is how it should have been, right?
Yeah, you want true realism, fuckers? That's what we had at one point, and people ruined it. Going from 8 and 4 to 6 and 6, and then 6 and 6 to 12 and 12. I think the only issue with the 8 and 4 is that you had the people who were oval drivers only running 4 races out of the season, but then getting really hyperinflated road I ratings.
Could you imagine running like Michigan and it counting for road I rating?
I'd be running every 2 hours.
Well, that's what people do sometimes when the Star Mazda runs it. It's one oval track a year.
Yep. So, essentially, that is kind of the background to Team Afterburn. Now, the team itself, I was just like, fuck it, if I'm having to run by myself, I'm going to get some people to work with. And the first teammate I had was actually Mark Warmington. Now, we all know Mark. Mark's a lovely guy.
Yes, he is. Very intelligent as well.
And what worked is that Mark and I, we started working, I think this was through the Indy 500 in 2011, back when I actually cared about what was then the Club England forums, before they became, I really can't bash an entire club, but management changed and it became a bit shit. But I worked with Mark Warmington at Indy, and then we worked together with Texas, which was when I had my first iterations with my best friend in the whole wide universe. And then Mark and I spent, get this, a weekend at Milwaukee. We did a total of 18 hours of testing, and we did about 1,800 laps each.
My God.
I still can't run that fucking track.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of testing. I mean, I could drive it a lot better now than I used to, and those 1,800 laps, it got a bit tough at times. And of course, this is when Milwaukee was a bitch to drive as well, and New Hampshire. I mean, both of those tracks are a bit pussy shit to drive these days. I mean, New Hampshire, you know, it's just turn up to the race and make sure you don't crash and you might get a top 5. But Milwaukee back in those days was difficult, and that, in fact, was part of the reason why Mark became so good at setting up the short tracks, and this is the first pipe bomb. If you think that it was only one person, Team Afterburn, that built setups, think again.
Why am I not surprised that one person on your team claimed that they did everything?
Well, this is the thing, that as far as track setups went, you had one person, we'll come to the people in a minute, you had one person who would specialise at Pocono, you'd have one person who would specialise at, you know, your pure short tracks like your Phoenixes, your Richmonds, your New Hampshires, your Milwaukees. Then you had our good friend who did most of the work for the 1.5s because he unlocked the secrets, and I'll come back to the secrets bit in a moment. Indy was a collaborative effort. You had one guy who knew how to fuel save and taught us all about fuel saving, and then you had Sean Stroud who would find you a 10th and a half by himself in about 20 minutes.
That's pretty impressive in the IndyCar to find that much time.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, Team Afterburn would have been nothing had it have been from Sean Stroud, and this is the whole thing, actually. He was one of the first people to sign up, and I forgot about him. Literally, and he turned up. It was like, and he was like, "Oh, hi, Sean, how you doing?" And he joined. He was the last person to join the team formally, but one of the first people to sign up because, of course, I tested the idea of Team Afterburn in the Club England forums before I posted it publicly.
So was Afterburn initially a English team, and it just kind of grew from there, or no? Or was that never the intention?
I thought English team, but then I realised actually, well, it's not going to be a lot of scope for that because there wasn't many people who ran the IndyCar. It was really just myself, Mark Warmington, Sean Stroud. Occasionally, you'd have, you know, Dave Carr-Smith, affectionately known as the Jew, Nick Cronin, etc. But they were very part-time, only about tracks like Michigan, and then a couple other people like Darren Seal back in the day, for example, and that was it. So you wouldn't get a viable, decent team where you were committed all the time. So then I looked Europe-wise, and I thought, actually, what I'd like to have is a split between Americans and Europeans, because that would really help as far as the time balances go. So therefore, in the big races, the Americans can run their race, the Europeans can run their race, and you wouldn't get too much crossover between. Kind of worked at the beginning.
Gotcha.
So yeah, eventually we put out the applications. For people who actually said that I just accepted everyone, it's a lie. Actually, I turned about 2/3 of people down, mainly because of the fact I didn't want bad. When I say bad drivers, I meant crash drivers.
That's understandable.
Yeah, and it's actually the same rule that I kind of have in the ISOWC. I mean, I like people to have less than, I think my limit was less than 3 inks per race, which I think is fair, because if you're getting 3 inks per race in an IndyCar, then you're generally crashing out of every race.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
So, this is one of those things that we just kind of, wanted to make it so that they're clean drivers, because clean drivers you can make fast, and so on and so forth from there. And we had a nice split, and actually, you know who the last person to join was?
Ooh, can I guess?
Yeah.
Was his initials RN?
Correct. I'm going to call him by name. If you have any issue with this, then sue me, Ryan Norton.
Speaking of Ryan Norton, how did he end up on the team? Like, what did you know of him when he joined the team? And like, most people know what he's about now.
Okay. I didn't know. I say I didn't know anything about him. I knew a little bit, and the bit I knew about him was a historic thread about welfare setups, and the first welfare setup he ever did was at Richmond back in 2011 season 1, and it got to about good old IndyCar fashion 8-page argument, at which point there's a challenge between Tim Doyle and Ryan Norton to run in that setup, and Tim Doyle was going to beat him, and then one person never showed up, and it wasn't Tim Doyle.
Why am I not surprised that somebody, ran their mouth and then didn't back it up?
And okay, that became kind of historic in folklore at that time. And there's a second backstory to that, and this was unbeknown to me until about 6 months later, that actually Ryan was part of what was at the time Ludicrous Online, which people probably know today as Panther Online Racing. And Ludicrous Online was basically Niles Anders, Chris Cahoe, Monica Clarebrand, and at one point involved Ryan Norton. And you had Tim Doyle on that team at one point as well. You had some support from P1 guys in that team at one point as well. In fact, actually, one of the reasons why P1 stopped supporting them was because of Ryan. And apparently, it's a great story I've been told about a race at Talladega and some unnamed people, because I'm going to protect some people's dignities and credibilities here. A race at Talladega where people were accused of cheating because they were faster than him.
Well, the surprises just keep cropping up, Will.
I know. So yeah, I thought, you know what, I'll give it a chance. And I had worked with Ryan a little bit at Texas back when Mark and I were working together. And then he was the last person to join. I think I had a chat with Mike Larson about it, and we thought, well, you know what, we'll try it out. And it was fine for the first week. I mean, I have to say, the first 4 or 5 months of Afterburn were great. We had Yves Warner, we had Marco Vitanen, we had myself, Mike Clarkson, all the European drivers. Then we had Sean Stroud as well. We had Ryan Norton. And the first issue became when Ryan decided that he wanted to invite someone from Florida to join the team.
Who was that?
Mike Campanian, and this was without really, it was the sort of thing you said, I'm going to ask to see if it's okay, but you're only going to say yes to me.
Okay. One of those deals.
Yeah, one of those deals. And in fact, if Ryan were here, he'd share in this story as well. One of the funny things about that was actually, back in the day, we always used to test quite a lot, and we were each turning out 400 or 500 laps easily in a big test session, trying out ideas before the soft race. And then a certain person would come in about 20 minutes before the strength of field race on a Monday night, and it became a joke. It's like, go and get your pen and paper, because it would always come in, ask for the setup, and then ask how to run this setup. And back in those days, the setups were rather complicated. You start the weight jacket at one point, then over the course of 3 laps, as the tyres warmed up, you had to move the weight jacket from this to this and do this with the roll bars as well. And it was a bit of a button bashing. It was a Pastor Maldonado game, essentially.
Yeah, I remember. I'm sure our setups weren't as complicated as yours, because we didn't have the knowledge that you guys did. But I do remember there was a lot of weight jacker movement and bar changes. not even just a couple laps, but even throughout the run, you're running the gamut from -2, 3 to +4, 5 even in one run.
And this is back in the days when you used to be able to go from -6 to +6. I joined iRacing back when it was 20 to 20. Then they moved it to 12 and 12. In fact, I think it was 12 and 12 that we could run at when I was on iRacing, because then they moved it down to 6 and 6, and back up to 20 to 20, because of course iRacing had no idea which one it was that it was supposed to run. And we literally button bashed those first 3 laps, and it was always a case of go and get your notepad and pen out, and we're just going to tell you. We kind of got bored of it in a while, but that was one of the first things. But back in the day, there was a lot of testing going on, and it was broken down nicely into the 2 camps as well. You'd have likes of myself, Mark, etc., working on setups and transferring it over. The American guys, Matt and Ryan, etc., would look at it, they'd come up with ideas. Sean would come along, put in his 10th and a half, and then we'd carry on, and that was how it would go. And it was fine. And actually, at one point, we then decided, and this was about 3 months into it, and you might know about this, because this is the famous knitting episode. We invited some Finnish people over, because we're going to start a NASCAR team up. And it was Joni Backman, Petu Kottavara, Joni Hagner, Marko Viitanen, and I think Pasi Valtonen was involved in it as well. If Pasi wasn't, I apologise in advance. And we're going to start up a NASCAR team, we're going to go for pro. When we look back at it 2 years later, Team Afterburn could have been a team in the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix winning races. Think about that.
Wow, it's amazing. You guys obviously had the setup potential and knowledge. If you could make an IndyCar work, I'm pretty sure you could make a NASCAR work similarly. A lot less to do. Of course, different ball game, but
in NASCAR, especially in that mid pack.
Sure,
and also more driving in NASCAR. Let's be honest, there is more driving in NASCAR.
Absolutely. IndyCar, it's kind of like point and shoot. NASCAR, it's like point and hope it makes it.
We're going to set up a pro team, and this is actually the time that I was trying out Afterburn Broadcasting as well, because I had the ISOWC running at that point. It was in its first series. We broadcast our first race through we actually had a deal to have that first race for a broadcast company called RTV, who I don't think exists anymore, and then they decided at the last minute they're going to keep my money but not do the broadcast.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, great professionalism there. So we got some Germans involved, SimRace TV, who actually broadcast Formula Sim Racing to do it. The only issue is that on iRacing, it's a little bit difficult when you have all the overlays running, because it really puts a lot on the processor, and I managed to crash a German gaming server.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
You're really in depth back then, huh?
So, we started doing Afterburn Broadcasting, and it was an idea which I was running with myself, and we had Randy involved, and Yoni actually had some ideas in that as well. And actually, Afterburn Broadcasting, then Yoni with Marco and what's his fucking name? Yana Metakayan then came up with GlacierTV. Now, I'm not going to take credit for GlacierTV because they did that themselves, but the idea of setting up a new broadcasting was something that Yoni and I had talked about quite heavily, and it was going to be a really good idea. The only issue is, whilst I was coming up with this idea and something else, there was someone who kept on complaining about the fact that I was trying to put all this time and money into it, and, I should just pay ETV Motorsports to $120 to do each race instead, because they can do it and I can't.
So, I'm sure I know, who would be complaining about you trying to better yourself?
No comments. That was one of those things that happened there. In fact, there's actually 2 incidents. There was one on the racetrack. There's an ISOWC race at Dover, which it was the first time that we'd ever run a race at Dover in the IndyCar, really. We tried it out, and it was funny because I was working in a setup, and I was like, guys, try this out, it's great. And there was a certain person saying, guys, try this setup, it was great. Try this setup. I couldn't drive it. Drove my setup, I was the fastest one out there. No one was driving my setups, because apparently Will Vincent can't build setups, even though I was building my own setups before I joined Team Afterburn.
It was a surprise.
Yes. But there was 2 incidents, and then we had the famous knitting incident. Do you know anything about the knitting incident?
No, I do not.
Well, there are a couple of people who do, and this is why, for about a year, every time we used to go to Homestead Miami Speedway in the IndyCar, the first thing I would do is post a photo of a stuffed animal or something that was knitted.
All right, you got to explain the background on this then.
So what happened was, and we had a great website back in the day, a nice forum. We had Facebook style chat running on the website as well, and then we had our own TeamSpeak. And for the ISOWC event, the Homestead one, it was a fixed setup because we'll try a fixed setup. So idea, iRacing had just allowed fixed setups to be in hosted sessions. Well, yeah, we'll try it out. It'll be fun. And a setup was built, and the person who built it claimed that it was built in 20 minutes. I'm not going to confirm or deny because I honestly don't know if it was built in 20 minutes or it was 4 hours of work. I don't actually stalk people, but it was claimed it was built in 20 minutes and it was used for the ISOWC race. That setup was then posted on the forum as the welfare setup for the upcoming Homestead Miami Speedway event. The only issue is that Marco Viitanen then spent about 8 hours testing and couldn't go any faster. I mean, literally, we're talking about any faster. We're talking about 100th, maybe 200th of a second.
That setup I remember quite well. I remember having much success with that quote-unquote welfare setup, and I remember being in, having a lot of battles with my, excuse me, my Campanian, Monica, all the Afterburn people, because I'd already had my problems with Ryan Norton. When I first came on the iRacing scene, he seemed like the guy who was trying to help people out, but then it quickly turned into, well, if you don't give it back to me and acknowledge my greatness, then I'm going to make sure that I treat you like the lowliest thing on the planet. And we had an incident in Vegas where I decided to play some strategy and stay out on some older tires, and Norton and some of the other Afterburn guys pitted, and he couldn't get around me because you can't really pass on the outside, and he kept trying to do a over under on me coming out of turn 4, and I'm on the white line. He gets on the apron and hits me, and then I'm like, hey dude, I'm here, and he's like, I'm faster than you, get out of the way. I'm like, well, if that's how racing really works, then no one would be doing it, because I'm not going to just move out of your way. If I'm so much slower than you, you can feel free to pass me. And then a couple laps later, tries to swoop up real high in turn 1 and 2 to try to cut underneath me, and he mistimed it and ran over my left rear tire, sending us both into the fence. And he immediately says that I drifted up and put him into the fence. God forbid any incident was ever his fault. So, leading up to Homestead, I've got this setup that he shares, and I'm faster than him and most of the Afterburn guys with it. And boy, I made sure I rubbed it in every one of those guys' face. Me and Campanian had tons of wrecks. I mean, we battled each other hard every lap. Mike was always hitting me. I was hitting him. I mean, like rivalry of rivalries. We hated each other.
That was one of the biggest rivalries I think I ever saw. And of course, I saw one side of it because on the forums it was always Campanian. And let's be honest, the guy doesn't know how to write in paragraphs. He knows how to write in sentences, then put 2 line breaks, and then write another 6-word sentence, and then 2 more line breaks, and then another 6-worded sentence, repeat. And there'd only be about 4 sentences on there, but it'd take half a page if you were to type it out in Word. But let's not forget as well that this period was just after Dan Weldon died. So I was emotional as fuck anyway. Emotions were running high generally in IndyCar as it was, and there's a lot of shit going on about, what happened, the crash, whether it should have happened, whether the race should have happened, etc. And then we had this to add on to it at the same time as well. And this argument really kind of started the day after Dan Weldon died. And let's be honest, I wasn't in the mood to mediate an argument, so it kind of happened. I went to bed one night, I woke up the next morning, and I believe the key quote was, and there was an argument between Marco and Ryan. The key quote was, I built this setup in 20 minutes. If you can't improve the setup in 6 hours of testing, you should just go back to knitting.
Wow.
Why Marco Beaton and Yoni Bachman, Petru Kotavara, Yoni Hagner all left Team Afterburn because of the knitting argument. And there were some things that were said by Marco which were unrepeatable. Literally, I can't say it word for word because I haven't got the script in front of me. I've got the backup of the website somewhere, but unrepeatable for Marco. And there was some stuff from Ryan which is unrepeatable to him, vice versa. And you know, when you have an argument, things get heated. It'd be the sort of thing that would get you a permaban from iRacing, let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure it was ugly.
Yeah. And then eventually they all left, and it was the Finnish guys just left, and that was that. But the knitting argument kind of, the joke and the argument kind of went on from then on in. And I say I kept a good relationship with Marco, and he sent me a PM. He was like, "Look, my beef's not with you. My beef is with said person, and you know, let's wish each other well." And of course, 6 months later, I started commentating on GlacierTV, and the rest, as you know, is history.
So, because of Ryan Norton and the knitting incident, that's the reason why the Wil and Dave Show exists on GlacierTV.
Correct, and it's also the reason why GlacierTV became as big as it was in some ways, because I think as it was in Team Afterburn, as Afterburn Broadcasting, it wouldn't have had the success it would have done. And it is kind of ironic how, you know, people sometimes drift apart but they come back together, and it's kind of ironic in some ways that a lot of good came out of that incident, actually, as far as me personally is concerned, because then, you know, as far as GlacierTV was, I could then go into it as a commentator without having to really worry too much about the broadcasting side of it per se. That helps in the commentary set. But also, I remember being so frustrated at the end of that week after everything that had got on. It was something like 11 o'clock at night, last race of the season, and I thought, fuck it. I've had a shit week thinking about Dan. I've had a shit week, everything concerning IndyCar. I'm going to go and run a race. And I was in a race which had Nefriarg in it. I had to call him by Nefri, and my good friend James McClure, depending on how you know him. And one of the most emotional races I ever did, but also one of the best races I ever did, because literally I remember me and Jim were running side by side for 20 laps. Kitch was about 2 tenths of a second ahead of us, couldn't break away. Jim and I were too busy running, racing side by side to actually be able to catch and pass Nefri, so on and so forth. Great race, and that is actually that race in itself is one of the reasons why I became so close with Jim. And of course, at the same time, Kitch, because we'd sent some PMs to each other over the course of the week. But I think that race in itself kind of reaffirmed quite a few things. And actually, one of the big issues by this point of Afterburn was, and this is one of the things that I will give advice to anyone who's on a team right now. You're not just, when you're on a team, you aren't just recognised as who you are as an individual, but you also recognised as who you affiliate with.
Well, man, that brings up a good point, because obviously you're an insider, being the founder of Afterburn. But I mean, as an outsider, and I would race against guys on Afterburn like Norton and sometimes Stroud. He had a bit of an attitude sometimes, but I mean, I guess when you're that good, you can kind of afford to do so. Campanian, John Goke, for that matter. I mean, it's like this whole team, in my mind, is just full of a bunch of dicks. and you know, if you got guys on your team that run around like morons, just purposely wreck people, and don't give a damn about it, that's going to shine negatively on, unfortunately, some of your teammates who might not have nothing to do with it. I know for a long time, man, if you were associated with Afterburn, I didn't want nothing to do with you. It wasn't until Afterburn, you know, imploded that I was able to kind of, me personally, break that kind of link of, you know, jerk guy with jerk team. I mean, me and Campanian, I've talked to him for hours on end since, you know, that all happened, and it's just, you know what, we were two guys that wanted to win so badly that we just happened to be together all the time, and, you know, we didn't give each other an inch, and we wrecked a lot of virtual cars, but damn, we had some good battles.
Even you and me, I mean, back when I used to race a lot more, we had some fucking huge, our rivalry was kind of tough at times.
Oh, me and Goke too. I mean, God, I hated Goke, and Goke, if Goke was here, he'd tell you the same thing. But man, once I joined the Banshee team and started like talking to these guys, hey, we're really not that much different. And I could say,
guy's a cunt though.
no, he's not. I could say that most of the people that I met on the Banshee team, I would consider friends, and Gok and you are right up there as some of the best friends I have in the world. I mean, you're really good guys, and you know what? Sometimes racing will do that to you. You just kind of click into another segment of your brain where you don't care about anything but getting that checkered flag first, even if it is just in the virtual world.
And I think you make a good point there as well, is that, if you break it back down to individuals, and actually, there's nothing, for the majority of cases, overtly wrong with anyone. Yes, people have some attitudes. Yes, people have really strange personalities. For example, I've got a really strong personality, really sarcastic personality. Put me into a team situation where you're thinking, oh, this guy's a dick, people will start thinking, well, you're a dick as well. But you break it back down, actually, the people inside aren't that bad, but you tie it all together, 7 small dicks makes 1 big dick. Whereas, individual dicks, you can deal with individual nuances, but when you put it all together, it just becomes, like when you're, let's pretend you're in high school. You see one guy who's just, a bit of an ass to you, and you can ignore him. You see 7 of them, you're thinking, I hate these fuckers.
Yeah, it's kind of like that gang mentality. It's like you almost have to defend yourself against the group, because if you're on a team, you're not going to stray away from your teammate even if they do something really stupid or purposely wreck someone or drive like a moron. If your team goes out and says, yeah, Dave, you're right, Campanian totally drove you like a moron and it was his fault. I mean, then what's going to happen within the team?
Yeah. So, good things came out of Homestead, but at the same time, I also lost 3-4 really good drivers out of that as well. And I think that was a turning point as far as Afterburn went. Because from then on, it became, I wouldn't say ugly, but it became more of a power, I'd say almost a power struggle. And there were some other things that went on here as well. Season 4, 2011, was Sean Stroud's championship, pretty much. And it was that point when him and Ryan were really wanting to go for the championship, and they were pushing. And I mean, this is the point when they'd gone from, okay, we know that we can be good, to we want to get this championship. And naturally, because of that, and I will give credit where credit's due, Ryan and Sean started testing a lot more than they did previously. And we'd go from, I don't know, doing 6 hours of testing a week to those two guys doing 20 hours of testing a week.
Wow, that's a huge difference. But they really wanted it, though, right?
Yeah. I say they wanted it, but of course the rest of the people on the team kind of reap the rewards and the benefits of that, which is natural. But at the same time, when you set up a team, you're not going to get everyone to sign a contract and say you must test for 2 hours a week, or you must test for X amount of hours. So it was like, naturally the workload went up because certain people wanted more. There's at the same time other people, for example, Amundsen just still enjoyed picking up a car and racing it, and he wasn't going to go and try and run for a championship, but he liked winning races and running well in races. Naturally, though, that the benefits of people testing more would then prevalate, and that's where the issue started. Is all of a sudden people wanted to test more, but I think they wanted other people to test more with them, and then you've got to balance the things of people working with that and people having other things outside of iRacing, etc. And I think that was the post knitting incident really became a turning point. And I mean, let's be honest, we were October 2011 here. First half of season 4 2011 was good, and then it really started degenerating as we approached that run to Indy. And you know what the run to Indy is like. If you're an individual or if you're on a team, you put in 10 times as much effort, and between where we are now and the iRacing schedule, getting towards the end of week 13 on this Saturday to the Indy 500, guys will test a lot. And then the second the Indy 500 is done, you watch the race on TV, you don't want to see Indy again for 2-3 months until the ISOWC Indy 500 comes along.
Yeah, for those who might be listening that don't understand what we're talking about, when the iRacing Indy 500 comes up, that's your chance to show that you're one of the fastest 33 drivers to attempt running the Indianapolis 500. The race that was broadcasted on iRacing only allows the fastest 33 drivers. It's not based on iRating or anything like that.
Race.
who enter the race. So basically, if you can qualify in the top 33, you're guaranteed in. Now, if you're outside of that, like you and I happen to be, you're hoping and praying a couple people just qualified and couldn't race or whatever have you. So, I mean, guys are just, this is the IndyCar guy's chance to shine, because if you're not in the NASCAR series, you don't have the pro races every week. You don't have the World Championship series and the Formula One car. You're like one chance a year to show what you have in the IndyCar at Indy, the most difficult track in the service as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, road courses have their own technical challenges, but to be solid and fast and to win at Indy, you got to be perfect for 800 corners. And that's very hard to do. Hell, it's hard to do for 4 laps of qualifying. So guys are just pouring every free chance they've got at it to get into the field so they can say, hey, I'm one of the fastest 33 on iRacing. Of 50,000 members and of 2,000, 3,000, however many people attempt to qualify that race. If you're in the top 33, that says something, and I'm proud that I was able to do that once in my life, because I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal note, you and I both, I mean, when I say scraped, I mean literally scraped into that Indy 500. In fact, I remember at that point we were on slightly friendlier terms, and we were PMing each other saying, I think we made it. And I was PMing people who I knew wasn't going to race, and you were PMing people who I know didn't race, and we came up with like, I think at least one of us is in.
Yeah, the way it turned out was Chris Manifold apparently partied a little too hardy the night before in the Coca-Cola lot, and he was qualified into the field, but since he did not sign up for the race, that allowed me to start 33rd in the field. Had he not made the race, I would have been in the second split, and no one would have ever heard of me.
And I was one place ahead of you in 32nd.
You were. Luckily, the following year, I was when I was with Banshee. Luckily, I was able to qualify 12th overall, I believe. So I was safely in. But man, I was sitting at my computer waiting for 12 o'clock to come up, and I had to hit the join button, wait for the session to load to even know if I was in the race.
Yeah. And I remember the year after as well. I actually qualified for that race. I mean, I know it pisses a lot of people off when people qualify and they don't actually run the 500. I deliberately qualified for that 2012 Indy 500 to prove a point. In fact, no, it's this year, the 2013 Indy 500, sorry, the 2013, to prove a point, because there were a couple of people who said to me that I only was able to get into that Indy 500 out of luck in 2012, so I proved a point. Before I went to Indy, I turned on my computer, 7 o'clock in the morning, I did one run, and thankfully was able to qualify in the field.
Yep, you did. And, it's funny, famous names like the Bettenhausens, I mean, we were all at the Indy 500 last year, and they were, we know how much Indy means to the Bettenhausen family. I mean, they've lived their whole lives in it, and Todd and Carrie would, even though it's just a virtual Indy 500, it's still just as important to a lot of people. And those guys were leaving every 45 minutes to go back to their computer to get another qualifying attempt in to make sure that they were in the field. I mean, it might sound stupid to some people who don't like racing or don't understand what we do on here. This is our only chance at racing glory in our lives. We're never going to be able to, most of us are never going to be able to race a real race car, or even if we do race a real race car, we're not going to be anywhere near anything that means a damn, whether, on TV or IMSA or Skip Barber or anything like that. This is the one chance that we have to make something and prove to ourselves and others that we know what it takes to race, even if it's just a virtual car. And to be in the Indy 500, man, I mean, if you can't win it, at least you had a shot at it.
And let's not forget, once you're in that field of 33, anything can happen. Now, I'm thinking, we've gone through the highs, and I say the high really included winning the Season 3 championship. Tim Doyle won that one, we came second. And then, of course, we won the Season 4 2012 championship. Is this a good point to make a pause and come back to it next week? Because we've done the rise, now we've got to come down to the fall of Team Afterburn. And the fall, I've got to plan this out a little bit more, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to need a week to kind of sort things out, because I'm sure, from an outsider's point of view and having talked to you, since that all went down. I know that a lot of things led up to it, and it wasn't a simple break. I mean, it was very complicated, and there were a lot of things going on.
Yeah, I'll give you the headlines of what we'll talk about in part 2 of the Afterburn Diaries. It started off with, again, the testing thing. I think that testing thing is an important point, and looking back at it 2 years later, I can see where multiple parties were coming from. And, of course, with more people testing, with fewer people testing more often, what it meant is that there were more setups available to people who were normally testing, and then thought, well, what's the point of me testing? So I'll come back to that point. But that was mainly for the 1.5 mile tracks, and then all of a sudden these certain people started testing a lot more on the short tracks when they used to specialize in one area, and then that meant that on the short tracks there was less work again to be done. So I'll come back to the testing loads and the impacts all of that had together. And then of course you've got the coup, because there was a coup. I didn't find out about this coup until after Team Afterburn folded, but apparently there was a coup. So I'll run through that one. And then there was Motegi Gate, which was just before Indy. And then, of course, there was Indy 500 itself. And then there was the famous Milwaukee incident.
Oh, yes. Shall we even mention who was involved in that, or should we leave that for next time?
I think we'll leave that for next time. In fact, we might even try and get a word with one of the parties involved in that incident, because, they were instrumental, and in fact, they were... And that's one of those things as well. I think one thing I will say before we leave it for today is that I know that there were a lot of people who disliked Team Afterburn. In fact, there were some people who disliked me. So he didn't dislike me, but disassociated with me because of the Team Afterburn affiliation. And it's kind of ironic that one of these people actually was the people who was instrumental in Team Afterburn dying. It was almost as if it had come full circle in some ways. So we'll come back to that in what will be part 2 of the Afterburn Diaries next Saturday, 6:30 p.m. on GlacierTV. Anything else motorsports we need to talk about?
No, why don't I think we should just leave it at that. Episode 26, part 1 of the Afterburn Diaries next week. Part 2, episode 27. Well, we've done 26 straight episodes already.
Aw, you're listening to the Wil and Dave Show.
Wow. So, episode 26 of the Wil and Dave Show is in the books. We talked about motorsport, because we talked about motorsport, because after all, this is a motorsports podcast, and we did the first part of the Afterburn Diaries. If you got bored doing the Afterburn Diaries this time, next week's one's going to be a lot more controversial.
I promise you guys, I'm going to make Will start naming names and stuff to spice things up even a little more.
So, yeah, less circle jerking than it was this time, and more naming and more direction and more controversial moments in part 2 of the Afterburn Diaries. It could be, it'll have to go down to 3 parts. We'll find out next week. What we've got to talk about next week as well, we'll have Richmond to talk about. We'll be talking about Talladega, of course, build up to that, because Dogecoin will be in action. We've got more Formula 1 action, we've got a review of Barber Motorsports Park, and, of course, we'll be looking forward to the month of May!
Of all my podcasts, this one was the most recent.
There we are, first primetime episode.
Yep.
You think anyone noticed?
Maybe.
Yeah, worst case scenario is we just didn't read some tweets out. Oops, we weren't paying attention.
I swear.
Yeah.
We should do how the Wall album, how it circles around back to itself.
Yeah.
Because at the very beginning it's this where we left off, real quiet, and then at the end it's isn't this where? It'd be kind of funny to throw that in there sometime.
It will be. You've got to get more questions from me next week as well. We need to get more Twitter interactions on the questions as well.
Well, yeah, hopefully that one will be going off properly. But you know what? When people hear it, then we'll get some reactions, and I'm sure we can touch on things. Might have to have a Q&A, then part 2.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Why are you still recording?
Because no one realizes that this wasn't live.
Are we trying to tell them that?
Well, I think we just have.
But unless you edit that part out.
Yeah, true. Shh, don't tell them.
Okay, I won't tell then it'll